August 1944. The Allied breakthrough at Normandy has shattered German defenses across France, and General George Patton's Third Army is racing eastward at speeds no military planner thought possible. They're advancing 30, 40, sometimes 50 miles per day, pushing the Germans back in full retreat. But there's a problem nobody anticipated, and it's about to bring the entire war effort to a grinding halt. The armies are outrunning their supply lines. Every Sherman tank burns 5 gallons of fuel per mile. Every infantry division needs 650 tons of supplies daily. Ammunition, rations, medical equipment, spare parts. Everything has to be trucked overland from Normandy beaches, 350 miles to the front lines, through bombed-out roads the Germans destroyed during their retreat. The port of Cherbourg can barely handle a fraction of what's needed, and Antwerp won't be operational for months. At Supreme Headquarters, the logistics officers are staring at numbers that simply don't add up. Patton's tanks are literally running dry. In 1 week alone, forward units report being down to 3 days of ammunition. Some tank battalions are completely immobilized, not from enemy action, but from empty fuel tanks. The room erupts when Colonel Frank Ross briefs General Eisenhower on August 21st. They're losing 23% of supplies before they even reach the front. Truck accidents, German air attacks, vehicles breaking down mid-convoy. Eisenhower stares at the map, watching his window to end the war by Christmas closing. He needs solutions in days, not months. The meeting adjourns with no answers. That same day, 90 miles from headquarters, Technical Sergeant Raymond Kowalski sits in his truck cab, staring at wreckage from another convoy. 8 trucks overturned and burned out, supplies scattered across the roadside. A German strafing run caught them bunched together on a narrow road. Sitting ducks. Kowalski is 34 years old, a long-haul trucker from Pittsburgh before the war. No college degree, no military pedigree, just 15 years of driving steel shipments across Pennsylvania's mountain roads. The Army drafted him in '43, gave him 2 weeks of driver training, and sent him to France. Now he's watching good men die because nobody in command understands how trucks actually work. He lights a cigarette and thinks about something his dispatcher back in Pittsburgh used to say. Convoys are for show. Profits are in the spacing. The official convoy doctrine for the Red Ball Express is simple. Trucks travel together in formations of 20 or more vehicles, 60 yards apart, 25 miles per hour maximum. Safety in numbers. Kowalski has driven 6 convoys in the past 2 weeks, and every single one has taken casualties. The problem isn't just German air attacks, though those are deadly enough. The problem is what happens before the attack. 20 trucks bunched on a rural French road create a target visible from 10 miles away. When the lead vehicle spots enemy aircraft, the entire convoy stops. Nobody can maneuver. The trucks ahead are trapped by the trucks behind. The spacing that's supposed to provide safety instead creates a perfect kill zone. But Kowalski notices something else. On August 23rd, his convoy is delayed at a depot for 6 hours. Some trucks get loaded faster than others. A few impatient drivers just leave on their own when their cargo is secured. No coordination, no organization. Those independent drivers arrive at the forward supply dump safely, every single one. The official convoy Kowalski eventually joins loses 3 trucks to a German attack. He starts watching the pattern closely. Independent trucks traveling alone or in pairs, spread out over hours instead of bunched in 30-minute windows, are nearly impossible for German aircraft to target effectively. Even if the Luftwaffe spots one truck, it's not worth the fuel and ammunition to attack a single vehicle. But a convoy? That's a target worth diving on. The math is brutally simple. A convoy of 20 trucks is one target. 20 individual trucks spaced across 4 hours of travel time are 20 separate hunting missions. The Germans only have so many aircraft, so much fuel, so many pilots willing to risk it. Kowalski runs the numbers in a notebook. The convoys average 23% losses from accidents, attacks, and breakdowns. But the handful of independent trucks he's tracked? Less than 3% losses. On August 25th, he takes his notebook to his company commander, Captain Dennis Hayes, and says he knows how to cut supply losses by 90%. Hayes looks at the truck driver standing in his tent, dusty coveralls and oil-stained hands, and says the words that will echo through military logistics for the next 80 years. Kowalski, you're a DMN truck driver. Leave the tactics to people who went to West Point. The official Army rejection comes in writing. Hayes forwards Kowalski's proposal up the chain with a note recommending dismissal. The response from battalion headquarters is immediate and dismissive. Convoy procedures are based on established military doctrine. Individual vehicle operations create communication gaps, eliminate mutual support, and violate tactical protocol. Proposal denied. Kowalski reads the memo and laughs bitterly. These staff officers have been in the military for years, and they're lecturing him about vehicle operations when he's been driving trucks since they were in high school. But he doesn't give up. On August 27th, he approaches Lieutenant Colonel Martin Burgess, the Deputy Operations Officer for the Transportation Corps. Burgess actually listens for 10 minutes before shaking his head. He explains that if trucks go out individually and one breaks down, the driver is stranded in hostile territory with no escort, no support. These roads are still crawling with bypassed German units. Convoy security isn't just about air attacks. Kowalski argues that they're already losing a quarter of their supplies in convoys that are supposed to be safe. But Burgess insists this isn't a peacetime trucking company. There are reasons the military does things a certain way. The situation gets worse when Kowalski tries presenting his data at a driver's briefing on August 28th. Other sergeants shout him down. One yells that he's trying to get them all eliminated separately instead of together. Even the other drivers think he's lost his mind. The unofficial word spreads through the motor pools that Kowalski has a death wish, wants to play cowboy on French roads while German fighters are hunting. His own squad stops sitting with him at chow. But 3 people are paying attention. Private First Class James Booker, a driver from Detroit's automotive factories, approaches Kowalski privately and admits he's been watching the same pattern. The independent runs are safer, and everyone knows it deep down. They just won't admit it. 2 other drivers, Corporal Eddie Martinez and Private Willie Jackson, quietly tell Kowalski they'd volunteer for his method if it ever gets approved. On August 29th, Colonel Ross personally reviews the proposal and writes across the top in red ink, "Denied. Unauthorized deviation from convoy protocol is prohibited. Any driver operating outside established convoy parameters will face court-martial." The official army has spoken, and Raymond Kowalski's ridiculous idea is dead. Except someone else has been reading the reports. Lieutenant General Walter Bedell Smith, Eisenhower's chief of staff, doesn't sleep much in late August 1944. The supply crisis is approaching catastrophic levels. Patton has been ordered to halt his advance, not by Germans, but by empty fuel tanks. The British 21st Army Group is rationing ammunition. The window to exploit the German collapse is closing fast. Smith is the kind of officer who reads everything, including after-action reports from truck companies, casualty statistics from the Red Ball Express, and a proposal from some sergeant in Pennsylvania that everyone dismissed as insane. On August 30th, Smith walks into Colonel Ross's office unannounced and asks why this truck driver's proposal about individual dispatch was rejected. Ross is caught completely off guard and stammers that it violates fundamental convoy doctrine. Smith's voice could cut steel. General Patton's entire army is immobilized because we're accepting expected parameters. Give me this sergeant now. 2 hours later, Raymond Kowalski stands in a headquarters tent facing 3 full colonels and a lieutenant general. He's wearing coveralls that still smell like diesel fuel, hasn't shaved in 2 days, and he's pretty sure his military career is about to end. Smith doesn't waste time and tells him to explain his method, assuming they don't know anything about trucking. Kowalski takes a breath and explains that the Germans can't attack what they can't predict. Right now, they're sending 20 truck convoys at scheduled intervals. The Luftwaffe knows their departure times, routes, and speeds. They just station fighters along the route and wait. He pulls out his battered notebook and continues. But if they load trucks as fast as they arrive at the depot, no waiting for convoy assembly, and send them out immediately at staggered intervals, the Germans never know when or where to intercept. Instead of 20 trucks bunched in a quarter mile, you've got 20 trucks spread across 60 miles of road over 3 hours. Colonel Ross interrupts, asking about breakdowns and enemy ground forces. Kowalski explains it's the same solution as now, with escort jeeps on patrol routes. But one broken-down truck doesn't stop 19 others. And a bypass German unit might ambush 1 truck, but in a convoy, they'd ambush 20. The room falls silent. Smith looks at the numbers Kowalski's tracked. Conventional convoys, 23% losses. Independent trucks, 3% losses. Ross argues the data is too small, just anecdotal evidence from a handful of runs. Smith's decision is immediate. Sergeant Kowalski will run a trial operation. 1 week, 20 trucks under his dispatch method. If losses drop below 10%, they implement it system-wide. Smith looks directly at Kowalski and tells him he's got his chance and not to waste it. September 1st, 1944. Kowalski stands at the Alasa supply depot, watching 20 trucks roll in for loading. This is his test, his one shot. If it fails, men die and he'll spend the rest of the war in the stockade. If it succeeds, he might save thousands of lives. The traditional convoy method would have all 20 trucks wait until every vehicle is loaded, usually 4 to 6 hours, then depart together in formation. Travel time to forward dumps would be 14 hours, making total time from arrival to delivery roughly 20 hours. Kowalski's method is radically different. The first truck finishes loading at 0600 hours. He doesn't wait and sends it out immediately on Route 7, independent operation. The driver looks nervous but nods and rolls out. The second truck finishes at 0618. Go. Third truck at 0633. Go. Instead of a convoy departing at noon, Kowalski dispatches 20 trucks between 0600 and 1100 hours. 5 hours of staggered departures. They're spread across 90 miles of road at any given moment, traveling at optimal speeds for conditions rather than fixed formations. He also changes the speeds, telling experienced drivers to run what's safe, 40 miles per hour if they can do it, 30 if conditions require it. The Transportation Corps observers are horrified. Colonel Ross's deputy keeps noting violations, exceeding speed limits, no convoy organization, individual vehicle operations in a combat zone. But something remarkable happens. The trucks start arriving at forward supply dumps faster than any convoy has managed. The first vehicle reaches the Third Army depot at 1830 hours, 12.5 hours from departure, 90 minutes faster than convoy average. The last truck arrives at 0245 hours the next morning. All 20 trucks deliver their cargo successfully. 0 losses, 0 attacks. One minor breakdown that the driver fixes himself and continues without delaying anyone else. The German Luftwaffe does spot 3 of Kowalski's trucks during the run, but intercepting a single truck requires a fighter to divert from patrol, hunt down one target, and expend ammunition on minimal payoff. 2 pilots don't bother. The third makes one strafing pass, misses, and returns to base rather than wasting fuel on pursuit. Day 2 brings another 20 trucks with 19 successful deliveries. One accident occurs when a driver falls asleep and crashes, but it's a single vehicle loss, not a multi-truck pileup like convoy accidents cause. Loss rate, 5%. Day 3, 22 trucks, 22 deliveries, 0 losses. By day 5, even the skeptical colonels are watching the statistics with disbelief. Kowalski's method is cutting supply losses from 23% to less than 3%, a 90% reduction, and trucks are moving cargo faster than anyone thought possible. On September 7th, General Smith issues the order. All Red Ball Express operations will immediately adopt staggered individual dispatch protocols as developed by Technical Sergeant Raymond Kowalski. The transformation happens almost overnight. By mid-September, the entire Red Ball Express, nearly 6,000 trucks, has abandoned traditional convoy operations. Depots load and dispatch vehicles continuously around the clock. Trucks depart every 3 to 5 minutes instead of massing into vulnerable formations. The statistics are staggering. In the final 8 weeks of Red Ball Express operations, September through November 1944, supply losses dropped to 2.7%. Delivery speed increased by 32%. The amount of supplies reaching Patton's Third Army and other frontline units more than doubled. German after-action reports capture their frustration perfectly. A Luftwaffe squadron commander writes in October that Allied supply trucks now operate with no predictable pattern, and individual vehicle interdiction is an ineffective use of limited air resources. He recommends focusing fighter operations on tactical ground support rather than logistics harassment. The Americans have made truck hunting economically impossible for the overstretched Luftwaffe. The Red Ball Express, now running Kowalski's staggered dispatch method, delivers 412,193 tons of supplies in 82 days of operation. That's enough ammunition, fuel, and equipment to keep 6 Allied armies advancing across France and into Germany. Patton's Third Army alone receives enough fuel to drive from Normandy to the German border. The system spreads beyond the Red Ball Express rapidly. By November, trucking operations across all Allied theaters are adopting staggered dispatch. The British Eighth Army in Italy tests it and reports similar results. In late October, a German staff officer captured near Aachen is interrogated about supply operations. When asked about Allied trucking, he shakes his head in frustration and says through a translator that they can't target what they can't predict. The Allied trucks are like ghosts now, everywhere and nowhere. They stopped even trying to intercept them because it's a waste of fuel they don't have. That quote finds its way to intelligence summaries and eventually to Eisenhower's desk. The Supreme Commander circles it and writes a note to Smith recommending formal recognition for the sergeant whose method is forcing the Germans to concede the logistics battle. On November 18, 1944, 2 days after the Red Ball Express officially ends operations, Technical Sergeant Raymond Kowalski receives the Bronze Star Medal for exceptional meritorious service in support of combat operations. The citation specifically mentions his innovative tactical logistics methods that significantly reduced supply losses and enhanced operational effectiveness. Raymond Kowalski returns to Pittsburgh in 1946 and goes back to driving trucks, the same job he had before the war. No book deals, no speaking tours, just a Bronze Star in a drawer and memories of a few weeks in France when his crazy idea actually worked. But the military doesn't forget. The U.S. Army Transportation Corps formally adopts staggered dispatch protocols as official doctrine in 1947. The method becomes required teaching at Fort Lee, Virginia, the transportation school, where every logistics officer learns about the Pittsburgh truck driver who rewrote convoy theory. During the Korean War, the Berlin Airlift, Vietnam, Desert Storm, Iraq, and Afghanistan, American logistics operations use variations of Kowalski's method. Modern military supply convoys no longer mass into large vulnerable formations. Instead, they operate with dispersed timing, varied routes, and unpredictable patterns. The principle has evolved with technology. Today's military trucks have GPS tracking, satellite communication, and encrypted coordination systems, but the core concept remains exactly what Kowalski figured out in a notebook while watching convoys burn. Make the enemy's interdiction efforts economically inefficient by dispersing your logistics footprint. Civilian trucking learned from it too. The modern logistics industry's just-in-time delivery systems, staggered scheduling, and distributed warehouse networks all trace intellectual lineage to the same insight. Bunching creates vulnerability. Spacing creates resilience. Companies dispatch vehicles continuously throughout the day rather than in scheduled waves. It's more efficient, harder to disrupt, and scales better. They probably don't know they're using a method invented by a truck driver during the Second World War, but they are. In 2003, the U.S. Army Transportation Museum at Fort Lee opened an exhibit about the Red Ball Express. There's a section dedicated to Raymond Kowalski. His notebook, the one where he tracked convoy losses and calculated the math, sits in a display case. Next to it is a photo of him standing by his truck, cigarette in hand, looking like exactly what he was, a working-class driver who understood his profession better than the experts. The placard reads, "Sometimes the best innovations come not from commanders or theorists, but from the people actually doing the job." Kowalski passed away in 1983 at age 73. His obituary mentioned his Bronze Star, but didn't explain what he'd done to earn it. Just a retired truck driver, a veteran, a quiet man who'd done his part. But in every military logistics course taught today, in every dissertation about supply operations, in every analysis of how the Allies sustained their advance across Europe, there's a footnote about the sergeant who proved that sometimes the craziest idea is just the truth nobody wanted to hear. His method didn't just cut supply losses by 90%. It changed how the modern world moves everything from military equipment to consumer packages. Still used today, still saving lives, still making the enemy's job economically impossible. All because one truck driver from Pittsburgh refused to accept that convoys were the only way.